one of the founders of Nuffle Labs. So Nuffle Labs is a stake from anywhere solution, which essentially allows you to stake tokens from any L1 or L2 to EigenLayer. But what I'm going to talk about today is something that Ethereum community has been working around for a while, and I'll deep dive into the question of, is chain abstraction solving anything? So we talked about this last year. I was actually giving a presentation on this one. There were roughly 40 different L2s at that time. But if we go now and try to count them, I think it's 100 plus. We're also seeing a lot of new EVM L1s come into the game, like Barachain and Story just launched last week. And we also have another EVM coming in, which is Monad. But interestingly, we're also seeing a lot of LVMs, which is, I've seen the Eclipse guys today, but we're also seeing a lot of Solana VMs being sort of taken to Ethereum as an execution environment. And we even have things like Movement, which is a sidechain to Ethereum as a Move VM, and things like Fuel, which is coming from the Ethereum community, but started to build their own sort of execution environment just for scaling rollups. So what I call this is we're getting this blockchain salad, and that's kind of like a word salad that you see. The problem with this is that you have multiple wallets, multiple assets, and it's really hard for users to manage all these chains. So this is something that we've been looking very closely. So community's first response, it's been chain abstraction. It's been one of the most dominant discussions we've been seeing since 2024. One thing that I've observed over the last year is that, users are no longer tied to a single chain. We also saw a lot of sort of growing user overlaps between Ethereum and L2s, Ethereum and Solana. But when I go to folks and ask what chain abstraction is, the definitions quite vary. Some people talk about unified balances, some people talk about bridging, some people talk about intents. So I wanted to deep dive and see what people are when you ask that question, what's chain abstraction, how people respond. So one of them is, I took some tweets to just explain, because most of the conversations take place in Twitter about chain abstraction. One guy said, chain abstraction is all about unified experiences to simplify multi-chain interactions. So it's basically merging all your access passes at Disneyland into one big pass. I like that definition, so I just wanted to put there. The other one is hitting the complexity from users. So if you're moving from one chain to another, obviously, you don't want to see all the complex interactions. Some chain abstraction tools are allowing you to do this, where you can just come in, you can use one front end, and you can swap. The other thing is, which is Ilya, whom I used to work with at Near, it's this concept of unified account balance, which I'll explore later too, which is quite exciting, where you have USDC in a bunch of different chains. You don't want to just aggregate all of them to one chain and then do a transaction. Instead, let's imagine a product that can do a swap from USDC to Solana, but the USDC can come from any L2, any L1, and you do that swap. But overall, if you look at these different approaches, you can play with Grok, get 7-8 different definitions as well. But one of the most important things is obviously just it allows you to simplify multi-chain interactions, which is something that obviously Ethereum community is working on. So there's been a lot of sort of attempts to basically make sense of it all, because there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of products that are working on chain abstraction. One of the things that I was actually one of the attendees in a couple of workshops as well, is this cake sort of framework. You can divide this into sort of 4 different components. Let's say layers, because we like layers in crypto. So application layer, which is essentially the sort of the interaction layer, the front ends that people interact, or the mobile apps that people interact. You see this sort of different variations of different user sort of experiences. You obviously have the permission layer, which is accounts, sort of key managements, policies, and intents, which all of us have been sort of discussing for a while now. You have the solver layer that takes the intent and does something with it. So if in an order book, it fulfills the request. And finally, you have the settlement layer, which is final transactions and the bridging that needs to happen, basically clearing and almost quote unquote clearing in traditional finance. Obviously, you would think that this would solve fragmentation, but if you look at, obviously, this market map, you see that there's a lot of companies or protocols that are trying to do similar things, and they all have their own flavors, right? So for example, if you look at the order flow, there's 22 different ways to do different order flow through different protocols. And just like what we did with a lot of, if you look at the tech history, we had a problem, we created a bunch of different standardizations, and then now you have different standardizations that are competing. And if you look at traditional sort of tech history, that's been usually a problem. And what I think is that it's actually making this problem a bit worse. And you see this all the way through in crypto, right? You have layer ones that were having problems with scaling. To do that, there were newer layer ones that's been launched. Obviously, rollups on Ethereum have been emerged, which ended up being a lot of bridges. And those bridges led to fragmentation of liquidity. And with these liquidity, obviously, you saw a lot of bridge aggregators come in and trying to solve the problem. And I think that chain abstraction has a very sort of promising future, but we should not repeat that same pattern. This is an interesting, I brought up, there's been a couple of discussions around, does chain abstraction solve really anything, right? So we started with the fragmentation, are we solving really anything? I think it's a common criticism, but I want to kind of point out to some products that are quite interesting that is solving the UI UX problem. I think it's the first sort of the problem that chain abstraction is trying to solve, but then I'll sort of portray a picture how the future of chain abstraction should look like. So first, this Infinex experience that I really like. Essentially, if you're a multi-chain user and you want to basically swap one token to another, let's say from Solana to Arbitrum, you can actually do this in Infinex in a couple of seconds, which is quite interesting. So we didn't have this experience before. Obviously, you have stuff like Portal and others, but quite love the experience. So definitely go and check it out. I think it's something interesting. The other one is Universal X. I know I see Tabasco here, which is one of the chain abstraction KOLs, which is quite interesting too. Well, you can do cross-chain swaps, but what if, I said the experience before, you have USDC in all different chains. I actually did a swap today that $95 has been, I think I swapped it to Arbitrum this morning. Though your USDC could be on different chains, and you just come in, click, and actually buy OP. I bought OP apparently. And then I bought OP in a couple of matter of seconds. It settles quite nicely, and for like small transactions, it's amazing. And you have Near Intents, which is very personal to me because I worked at Near. One of the problems that we had as an ecosystem was that when Near launched in 2020, there was a rainbow bridge between Near and Ethereum. That took almost like 8 hours to sync, which was a bit of a problem if you want to go to Ethereum. Now you have Intent solving that problem to, in a matter of seconds, you can swap Near to Solana tokens, Ethereum tokens. So I would say like cross-chain chain abstraction solved some of the UX problems that we had on cross-chain swaps. But I think we can, there's certain things that we overlook, which is EVM, which this community has created. EVM is one of the things that people have been discussing on Twitter over yesterday, whether if you're launching an EVM L2 or an EVM L1, are you actually doing something with Ethereum? I would say EVM has been great to outsource some of the work that Ethereum wasn't able to do on Ethereum L1, do some of the experiences outside, for example, Monad is a great experiment, and take them back to Ethereum to scale the L1, scale the L2. But overall, we underlooked the premise of EVM. I think there's certain things like working at an alt VM, you get technical familiarity. If you have new devs that are coming to the ecosystem, there's a lot of technical work that's being done with the Ethereum community. New devs or some devs that are coming from Ethereum to another L1, you can actually leverage a lot of smart contracts, which is interesting. There's obviously economic advantages, right? So the shared liquidity that we're seeing with a lot of the Aglair has been putting work. There's a lot of Ethereum community has been pushing towards this economic advantage of it, and EVM has played an amazing role to be able to interop different layers, and obviously reduce fragmentation. I'll mention some of the ERCs as well, but overall, historically, ERC20, ERC721, all these standardized you can take these and then deploy to a new chain, and it works. Usually, it works to the new chain as well, which is quite exciting, and I think something we should look forward as Ethereum community. One thing that actually attracted my attention last week, Ethereum Foundation published this work, which is Open Intents Framework. So it is some sort of solving this problem of we're seeing too many of the chain abstraction standardization. What if somebody comes in and agrees with all the parties, Starknet, Polygon, Arbitrum, to have one open intent framework. I think it's pretty promising to sort of unify Ethereum L1 and L2 landscape. This is ERC 7683. So quite excited, right? We start with a sort of a one standardized way to do intents, which is something that the community has been working on for a while. So where does it take us next? I think cross-chain swaps are pretty interesting, but DeFi has been mainly focusing on sort of fighting for the same ETH. So every L2 came in, they basically did some incentives, got some ETH, and then when the incentives run out, the Ethereum just left that L2. But what I want to focus on as a builder is to top 20 assets have been sort of almost remain underutilized, right? If you look at, and I give this analogy, Ethereum is like Europe in the 1500s where you have the advanced technology, but resources need to come, there's resource constraints on like gold and others. So I think Ethereum can go other sort of blockchains, get some of these assets and make them usable in like lending or other markets. So I believe like the future of DeFi lies in bring those assets to the Ethereum L1 and L2 and make them usable. And I think chain abstraction is the way to do it, right? So you had cross-chain swaps, but what if you have cross-chain lending and borrowing, all these sort of quote-unquote structured products that you can create in DeFi that could sort of take some of these assets that historically have been sort of subject to chain racism, but now you can pretty much get that liquidity in and use it in Morpho or other permissionless markets. So I draw this picture. It's a very basic way to look at top 20 assets. The pricing might have changed. I know the market caps have been moving slightly over the last sort of month or so, but these are all assets that are pretty much almost like no smart contract utility didn't have. For example, Bitcoin, XRP has some, but Doge has been, it's almost a fork of Bitcoin. And when you look at them, like DeFi utilization rate is drastically low compared to Ethereum. Like Ethereum stands something around 16%. And when I say DeFi utilization rate, it's a very basic metric. You can go even further and make it more complex, but I just took literally like TVL divided by market cap, and Ethereum sits at 16%. But once you look at chains like Bitcoin, now it's 1%. I know Bitcoin DeFi has been taking off. We see Lombard BTC on Ethereum L1 being used in Morpho and Aave markets. But assets like XRP, Doge, these are very open. Like that's something that is interesting to take these into more deeper markets like Ethereum and give them usage so that basically users come to Ethereum L1, come to Ethereum L2 from different other chains and make them basically use the asset here rather than bootstrapping their own liquidity, bootstrapping their own DeFi, which Ethereum has been working on for ages. So the question, is chain abstraction solving anything? I think we've had sort of a solid foundation with some of the tools that we built, intents, bridges, message passing technologies. They weren't there last cycle. Like Layer 0 was just about to come to the market. Wormhole was actually got hacked and got worked on getting the security improved. I think we're coming to a perspective where we can actually go more than cross-chain swaps, and this is mainly that we are working on in Nuffle, is to push cross-chain lending, is to push all these structured products I can create. And one thing I just wanted to highlight, like EVM is an amazing tool that we built over time. Although alt-VMs are coming, people should sort of experiment with new alt-VMs. EVM has done a great job of standardizing most of the work that we're doing, and I think we can do that with open intent framework too. And essentially, we should work towards expand Ethereum DeFi's access and sort of create seamless cross-chain DeFi experiences that chain abstraction should be working on. And ideally, we talk about interoperability, but it's really about like getting sort of these assets used almost financial inclusivity. It's a bit of a term, but essentially taking these assets and being used on Ethereum to make Ethereum more liquid in a way is, I think, what chain abstraction should push for. Thank you for listening. So this is Nuffle. You can follow us on X. I'm also pretty active. Try to be more active these days. Been working a lot in the background, so my account is there too. And if you scan the QR code, you can find all the information about Nuffle as well. So 5 minutes, we can take some questions about chain abstraction or anything that you guys can jump in. I'll try to hear you, but it's. Yeah, it's great. So V4 and hooks and all the work that I'll actually show you. Let me see. This was part of Open Intents framework as well, so you can see the unit chain. It's been great. So like the intents experience have been created by Uniswap. It's been sort of working with the Ethereum Foundation and push that sort of standardization. I think is good for everyone. So intents will become, as far as I know, will become part of the unit chain, and also will probably part of all the Ethereum layer 2 ecosystem pretty much. If that's all, yeah. Thank you for listening.